Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, a major development involving a top local Democrat. The surprise announcement from Congresswoman Susan Davis.
Personally, I've been holding on to that 1% despite everything that is against it, and I already know, in my heart that it's not there.
Relatives talk about 5 family members lost in the Channel Islands boat fire, including a woman from San Diego. And the cost of building a border wall. President Trump is redirecting billions in military money. We're now getting new details on where it's coming from.
This administration, this Department of Interior, it's not that they are too close to the oil industry, it's that they are the oil industry.
And a new push to keep oil drilling off San Diego's coast. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening. It's Wednesday, September 4th. Thanks for being with us. I'm Ebony Monet. We start tonight with a surprise announcement from Susan Davis, the longest-serving Congresswoman. She says she is not running for re-election in the 53rd District. KPBS editor Tom Fudge has more on her decision.
At age 75, Davis is serving her 10th congressional term. She said in a press release her decision to leave reflected a desire to live and work at home in San Diego. Born in Cambridge, Massachusetts, Davis moved with her family to Northern California and attended college at Cal Berkeley. After moving to San Diego, she commenced a long political career, serving on the San Diego School Board and in the California Assembly. Then in the year 2000, she narrowly defeated incumbent Republican Brian Bilbray in the 49th District. Redistricting landed her in the 53rd District with its comfortable Democratic majority. Davis serves on the House Armed Services Committee and the Higher Education and Workforce Subcommittee. She said she hopes her successor in office will put public interest above self-interest. Tom Fudge, KPBS News.
We're learning more tonight about the 34 people who died in the boat fire near the Channel Islands. One of them, a woman from San Diego. Nicole Kitasol was with 4 family members on a scuba trip. She worked at a restaurant in Coronado. In all, 34 people were killed in the Monday morning fire. The remains of all but one of the victims has been recovered. Kitasol's stepbrother spoke with KTXL reporter Doug Johnson about his loss.
A Stockton family now presumed dead.
We're just trying to deal with it. It's only the second day out that we found out this news.
Dominic Selga says his mother, Fernisa Cison, his stepfather, Michael Quitasol, and 3 of his 4 stepsisters, Evan, Nicole, and Angela Quitasol, were on board the Conception when it caught fire off the coast of Santa Cruz Island this past weekend.
Personally, I've been holding on to that 1% despite everything that is against it, and I already know, in my heart that it's not there, but...
Selga and his sister Nisa Shinagawa says their whole family had become scuba certified, often taking family scuba trips together because their stepdad Mike had always enjoyed being in the ocean.
It was always a dream of Michael's to get back into scuba diving, and when him and my mom, got together, they wanted to start doing more things in their lives for themselves.
They say every year Mike and Fernisa went out on the Conception out to the Channel Islands National Park.
He's been on that boat multiple times. We've been on that boat.
Often, their kids would join them.
Something that brought our family in a little bit closer, being a mixed family, because they are adults, and I wasn't already an adult when my mom and Mike got together.
For years, Mike and Fernisa worked as nurses at St. Joseph's in Stockton, but recently the couple had moved on to working for Kaiser hospitals in Stockton, Modesto, and Manteca. Mike's daughter Evan had followed in their footsteps, working at St. Joseph's as well. While Nicole lived in San Diego, her sister Angela returned to Sierra Middle School in Stockton, where she was once a student, teaching science for the past 4 years, according to the district.
I would never think that would happen ever, on a boat that is so well known.
Mike is survived by a 4th daughter who also lives in San Diego. Fernisa has 2 grandkids who we're told still don't know.
They're 5 and 3, and every day they ask for their grandma and grandpa, and that's the thing that I fear the most. It's just telling them. I don't even know what to tell them.
That was Doug Johnson with that heartbreaking report. We're now seeing some of the video taken as the Coast Guard responded to the fire. Video from early Monday shows heavy smoke coming from the boat. It later sank and capsized, making recovery of the victims difficult. The Coast Guard and other investigators have yet to determine the cause of the fire. 5 crew members were sleeping above deck and were able to escape. San Diego public schools are back in session, and today the district is encouraging families to continue to apply for subsidized meals regardless of their immigration status. KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman is live at district headquarters to tell us why they're getting the word out. Matt?
Yeah, Ebony, a new rule from the Trump administration is going into effect next month, which Food Assistance Group and San Diego Unified say is leaving families confused. Now, today at the Board of Education office, officials gathered to discuss that upcoming change and clear up misconceptions about the public charge rule. Basically, before someone is deemed eligible to enter the U.S., receive a green card, or extend a visa, immigration officials look to see whether or not that person can support themselves or if they will need government assistance. If they do need that assistance, their immigration status could be jeopardized. Part of the rule change next month, accepting food benefits like CalFresh or SNAP could put someone's immigration status at risk. But free or reduced meals at schools is not considered a public charge under the new rule. Now, San Diego Unified wants parents to know so children don't go hungry.
Clear message to our families: this will not affect your status in applying for a green card. And we have great food and nutrition programs. We don't want any of our families to have any type of fear or confusion in applying for that free or reduced lunch program. We want to be perfectly clear and get out in front of it so everybody knows. We want everyone to apply. We actually have families that think they might not qualify, and they actually do.
San Diego Unified officials say they serve more than 100,000 of these free or reduced meals every day at its different schools. And officials want people to know, regardless of citizenship status, that these meals will still be available. In University Heights, Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
Thanks, Matt. The Trump administration's decision to pull money from military projects has consequences here in San Diego. KPBS military reporter Steve Walsh says the California Guard will lose an $8 million project.
Throughout the military, $3.6 billion was taken from 127 military projects to fund construction along the southern border. In California, the Air National Guard lost funding for an $8 million simulator scheduled to be built in the Channel Islands. Senator Dianne Feinstein said the flight simulator would have prepared C-130 pilots to respond to natural disasters. Senator Feinstein released a statement saying the decision by the administration to divert funds from military construction projects in order to build the president's ill-conceived wall is irresponsible, adding the president should have gone through the normal appropriations process. The money will fund 3 projects in California, including 1.5 miles of pedestrian fencing and 2 miles of secondary fencing near Otay Mesa, and another 3.5 miles of pedestrian fencing around the Tecate port of entry. 2 projects will extend a total of 13 miles of secondary fencing around the El Centro port of entry. The projects will be built by the Army. In a letter to lawmakers, Secretary of Defense Mark Esper says the construction will reduce the demand for troops on the border. Steve Walsh, KPBS News.
Thanks, Steve. 2 Southern California congressmen are rallying support to block new offshore oil drilling along the state's coast. KPBS environment reporter Eric Anderson says they argue it's not the time for new offshore oil platforms.
Congressman Scott Peters and Mike Levin have co-sponsored legislation aimed at blocking a Trump administration plan to sell new offshore oil leases in U.S. coastal waters. Levin and Peters are co-sponsoring a measure that creates a permanent ban on offshore drilling around the country. Levin says H.R. 1941 was introduced by a conservative South Carolina lawmaker.
House leadership has announced we're going to move forward with a vote on that new bill to protect our entire coast from drilling. And I'm hopeful we're going to pass that bill when we get back to Washington. And then, like so many other bills, I hope that it's one that Mitch McConnell will actually allow to be heard and voted on in the Senate.
Offshore oil drilling could endanger the region's beach economy. San Diego's ocean economy generates more than $8 billion in economic activity. That includes fishing, recreation, tourism, and construction. Bob Keefe works with the Business Alliance for Protecting the Pacific Coast. He says the region cannot afford to have a damaging oil spill.
Our beaches and our oceans in California are special places. They're part of the fabric of our lives here for many of us. What we also need to remember is that our beaches, our oceans, are the lifeblood of California's economy.
Tourism and recreation alone account for a $5.3 billion impact and more than 96,000 jobs in San Diego County. That more than doubles the estimated $2 billion impact linked to offshore drilling.
The lawmakers say they'll keep working on the issue to keep those oil rigs from popping up off the California coast. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
7 people are dead in the Bahamas as a result of Hurricane Dorian. Today, the United Nations announced it's supporting rescue and relief efforts. The islands were devastated by the storm, which is slowly moving north. Storm surge is expected to be the biggest threat to the Carolinas over the next couple of days. Whitney Wild has updates on the damage and forecast.
Here in Jacksonville, we're slightly inland where bands of wind and rain have been rolling over the city for hours now. We expect that the winds will peak until 10 o'clock tonight. The other expectation is that those wind gusts will hover between 55 miles per hour and 75 miles per hour here in Jacksonville. All of this as the storm makes its way north toward Georgia, the Carolinas, and Virginia.
As some Florida communities lift evacuation orders.
We got lucky in Florida, very, very lucky indeed.
Officials elsewhere are initiating new evacuations. Hurricane Dorian is finally rumbling up the East Coast.
North Carolina faces deadly storm surge and inland flooding.
A hurricane warning now extends from north of the Savannah River along the coast of the Carolinas and into Virginia. Dorian is now a Category 2 hurricane that may thrust record-breaking storm surge and flooding into low-lying parts of South Carolina.
Starting late this afternoon for 36 hours, I want Charleston to be a ghost town. I want everybody out of sight. If they're not out of town, inside, hunkered down, and safe.
Images from the Bahamas show Dorian's wrath. Some islands almost wiped away after the storm parked overhead for 2 straight days as a Category 5 hurricane. The U.S. Coast Guard is helping rescues and evacuations. President Trump is committing assets at the request of the Bahamian Prime Minister.
We're sending some people to give them a hand, and they need a big hand. What's going on over there is incredible. Few people have seen anything like that.
Here in Jacksonville at the airport, the flights into and out of the airport have been canceled. The expectation is that that storm surge will reach into the 3 to 5 foot range. In Jacksonville, Florida, I'm Whitney Wild.
Here in our county, it's been a day of heat, humidity, rain, thunder, and lightning. That was video taken on the campus of SDSU, but it wasn't isolated. There was plenty of rain all over. This is a downpour captured in Otay Mesa. Dajia Swad has tonight's forecast.
We have been hot here across San Diego County, and that continues into the extended forecast. Humid conditions tonight. Your temperature going to be at 73 for your overnight low and partly cloudy conditions. Now, dew points for tonight in the upper 60s. When we talk about dew point temperature, anything above 60 is just pretty muggy at that point and uncomfortable. We'll be dropping down to 67 for Oceanside. Noticing the clouds out there. A bit more moonlight for Borrego Springs with your overnight low at 84 and 64 for Mount Laguna. Now taking you into the Futurecast, 6 p.m. Pacific time. Clouds going to be available at the coast, but that marine layer just not as strong. We will notice some moisture back towards our east that will swing further to the west. So if you're out to Mount Laguna tonight, even just to the south of Borrego Springs, chance for some showers and thunderstorm activity that could lead to some flash flooding. We'll continue to see that overnight, then die down, and then into your Thursday morning, we'll be in this dry pocket as moisture is going to be a little further off to our north and east. So places like Salt Lake City as well as Denver still calling for thunderstorms. Slightly cooler air trying to work its way into Northern California, but here in Southern California, we're still hot and we're still humid. Here's a look at 6 p.m. tomorrow for your future dew point temperatures. San Diego at 70. Yes, it will be a bit oppressive, so we want to stay hydrated. Your actual temperature going to be at 83 degrees. Oceanside in the mid-80s and topping off at 106 in Borrego Springs, 81 in Mount Laguna, and temperatures are going to continue to hold on into our Friday as well, with a cooler trend into the upcoming week. Across the country, some wet conditions further to the north, and we're still tracking out Hurricane Dorian off the East Coast. So our trend here, warm Thursday, Friday, feeling a bit of relief Saturday with partly sunny skies, and then into the upper 70s Sunday and Monday at the coast. We'll be diving out of the 90s for inland areas and topping off at 86 on your Sunday. Look at all that sunshine for the end of the weekend. Deserts, well, we're above average. We'll start to get closer to average for your Sunday with a high of 100. And out to the mountains, we will also notice that cooler air making its mark as we close out the weekend. Reporting for KPBS News, I'm your meteorologist, Dajia Swad. Back to you.
Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg spoke to a packed house in Arkansas last night, just weeks after her latest cancer scare. She was introduced by former President Bill Clinton. He nominated her to the Supreme Court 25 years ago. Ginsburg talked with NPR's Nina Totenberg about her early days on the bench and how her work was an outlet during her cancer scare.
It was a lonely position, and viewing the court, there was something wrong with the picture. The public would see these 8 rather well-fed men coming on the bench. And then there was this rather small woman. I think my work is what saved me, because instead of dwelling on my physical discomforts, if I have an opinion to write or I have a brief to read, I know I've just got to get it done, and so I have to get over it.
Ginsburg says she's feeling good after completing radiation for a cancerous tumor on her pancreas. Doctors say she is now cancer-free. How does this sound? Every month, your local government gives you $500, no strings attached. Well, that's what's happening for some people in a California city. Haven Daly explains.
We didn't foreclose or nothing.
Susie Garza is taking part in a unique experiment. Once a month since February, the local government in Stockton, California has deposited $500 on Garza's debit card. No strings attached.
It's meant a lot. I feel very blessed. I feel very good about it, just to have the chance to have it.
It's part of a universal basic income study giving money to 125 randomly selected residents living below Stockton's median household income to see how it will impact their lives. The money for the project comes from private donations. The idea was the brainchild of Stockton's 29-year-old mayor who grew up poor in the city.
I think poverty is immoral. I think it's antiquated, and I think it shouldn't exist.
The idea of providing a supplemental universal basic income has become a hot topic in the current presidential campaign. Candidate Andrew Yang wants to give every American $1,000 a month, which he says could be paid for by increasing taxes on billionaires and corporations.
If you dig into our country's history, you find this a deeply American idea. Thomas Paine was for it at the founding of our country, called it the citizen's dividend. Martin Luther King championed it and fought for it in the 60s. 1,000 economists endorsed it in the 60s and 70s. It was so mainstream that it passed the U.S. House of Representatives twice in 1971 as the Family Assistance Plan.
The guaranteed income idea has its opponents, conservatives against government handouts, and labor unions who want well-paid jobs, not small payments with no opportunity for advancement.
It also is pushed entirely almost by the tech sector, which is trying to automate away jobs and make it more difficult for people to get a good job in this economy.
But Stockton's mayor says this to the critics.
I'm just as angry as you are, but I'm angry about the problem. I'm not angry about possible solutions.
Garza continues to look for work and says the extra $500 a month has allowed her to help pay the bills, spoil her grandchildren for the first time, and take her beloved dog to the vet, which she could never afford before.
I like it because I feel more independent. I feel more like I'm in charge Like I really have something that's my own.
University researchers are monitoring the Stockton participants and say they'll measure success not based on whether they keep or retain jobs, but on how much more happy they become.
Yeah, I love you too, I love you too, I love you too.
Haven Daily, Associated Press, Stockton, California.
They stay inside.
KPBS is part of the California Dream public media collaboration looking at the issues of affordability. You can find our coverage at kpbs.org/dream. A Catholic church spent millions settling claims of sexual abuse against children. But two of the alleged victims question why their claims of childhood abuse garnered a smaller payout. AP reporter Sarah Blake Morgan has their story.
In Greenwood, Mississippi, poverty is everywhere. The ramshackle buildings and faded signs of this community are the only backdrop Joshua Love has ever known.
I can't accomplish nothing here. It's like every time I come here, it's like I'm sitting on a rock.
So when a $15,000 payment was put in front of both Joshua Love and his cousin LaJarvis Love, it was hard to turn down.
Well, they probably feel like we ain't never had that type of money before.
$15,000 may seem like a lot, but not when you hear what it was for. The settlement came from the Franciscan Friars, 2 decades after Joshua and LaJarvis Love say they were sexually abused repeatedly by a Franciscan brother named Paul West.
They knew we was poor.
Most settlements between the church and clergy sex abuse survivors are far higher. In 2006, for instance, the Catholic Diocese of Jackson, which includes Greenwood, settled 6 lawsuits involving 19 victims, 17 of them white, for $5.1 million, with an average payment of more than $250,000 per victim. Joshua and LaJarvis Love were just 9 and 10 years old when they say the abuse began.
He gave me an option to whoop me.
The cousins say West violently beat and raped them repeatedly on the campus of St. Francis School, where they were both students, and while traveling out of state on overnight trips. The Loves only recently reported the abuse claims to church officials.
He abused me. He molested me. He touched me. He groped me. These are things that he did.
Appleton, Wisconsin, West's hometown, was one of the places the men say they were taken as boys. Appleton is where West lives now.
Hi.
Hello.
Are you Paul West?
Yeah.
While West confirmed his identity to the Associated Press, he wasn't interested in answering any more of our questions.
We were wondering if we could talk to you about some things that happened down at St. Francis School in Greenwood, Mississippi.
I don't know what you're talking about.
You don't know what I'm talking about? Didn't you work there for a while?
Joshua Love's younger brother, Raphael Love, was first to report the abuse in 1998. Shortly after, the Wisconsin-based province of the Franciscan Friars say West asked to be dismissed from his vows and left the order voluntarily. But West never faced charges. The Associated Press spoke with Franciscan Friar Provincial Minister Father James Gannon by phone.
The settlement did not seem especially generous.
It is not. I would agree with you 100%.
How did it happen then?
No amount of money would ever settle anything. I do believe that something happened to these 3 boys.
When asked if the Loves' race or poverty played any part in the settlement size, Gannon told the AP absolutely not. While these men wish their settlement would have been fairer, what they're really searching for is justice. At least 4 law enforcement offices are currently investigating their claims against West. But in Mississippi, 2 men have to wait. LaJarvis Love lifts weights daily in a makeshift gym. And Joshua Love can sometimes be found sitting on his porch in a beat-up desk he calls his thinking chair.
It makes me feel like I'm still happy because it's a school chair. I guess there's that child inside me that still want to sit there and learn.
Sarah Blake Morgan, The Associated Press, Greenwood, Mississippi.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, Hurricane Dorian threatens storm surges from Florida to the Carolinas. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
Facebook is taking new steps to stop the spread of misinformation about vaccinations. It's launching educational pop-up windows that will appear when users search for vaccine-related content. Similar windows will also be coming to Instagram, also owned by Facebook. The move comes as the number of people sickened by measles in the U.S. this year eclipses 1,200. Facebook isn't completely removing all anti-vaccination information because it says users should be able to see both sides of the debate. Google will be paying a big fine for violating laws intended to protect children. The company has agreed to a settlement to pay $170 million. Most of that money will go to the Federal Trade Commission. YouTube admits to collecting personal data on children without parents' consent. Going forward, the company will add more labeling to material aimed at kids. It will also limit data collection on those videos regardless of the viewer's age. Many parents also try to set limits for their kids when it comes to sugary drinks. Now there's a new study showing a link between soda and life expectancy. Mary Maloney has today's Health Minute.
Next time you decide to indulge in your favorite soft drink, you may want to think twice. A new study by JAMA Internal Medicine found that people who drank 2 or more glasses of sugar-sweetened sodas a day had a higher risk of dying from digestive disorders. And those who drank the same amount of diet drinks had higher risks of dying from cardiovascular disease. The study followed more than 450,000 people from 10 European countries for up to 19 years. The connection is that high blood sugar and high sugar intake can increase chances for gut infections. The study also found that a high total soft drink consumption is connected to an increased risk for Parkinson's disease. The researchers stated the cause behind these associations isn't clear, just that the more you drink, the greater the risk. For today's Health Minute, I'm Mary Maloney.
You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.